surveys as well as having meetings so that we can actually get real data on which we make our decisions as a city. And we need to have a collective vision for what we're going to look like in the next 20 to 25 years. And we need to include everyone in doing this. So that's what I hope to work on if I'm elected, and I hope I have your support. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Kind of losing my voice, so if you can't hear me, I'll try to speak up. Back in the back. I'm just already. I've been Boulder for 6 years now. 43-year-old. I'm a father of two daughters. They go to school here in Boulder as well. I'm a renter. I'm also a business owner. I actually rent a place called Secret Gardening, and that's also my business. And I have about a 20-foot commute to work too, so it's great not to be driving around and having to burn fossil fuels in order to get around. I'm an environmental engineer as well as being a business owner. Worked on many large water treatment, wastewater treatment reclamation projects all over the U.S. and around the world. The year before I came into Boulder, I was in Abu Dhabi working on an ecosystem project called NASDAR. I've got a bachelor's and master's degree from UC Berkeley. And I love Boulder. I'm here for a lot of reasons, including the lifestyle, the great outdoors, sense of community, inclusivity I found here compared to a lot of places I've been. Great schools, family values, and freedom of expression. Arts, culture, I feel is very strong, but it also needs to be supported and brought further into the mainstream. This is a special place, and we're at a pivotal moment in the history of Boulder. The next city council will make decisions that will shape the city for many years to come. And we have an opportunity through the update of the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan, other planning documents, or sub-community plans to shape that future, to decide what it's going to look like for our children and grandchildren. A big proponent of what I understand as sustainability to be meeting the needs of the present while preserving the needs of the future, the ability of future generations to meet their needs as well. So obviously we have a lot of attractors here. We're attracting business and individuals for various reasons, lifestyle, opportunity, financial reasons for businesses. And that leads to growth. There's no doubt about it. We're growing, and then we've got a process between the idea that we are growing and what it looks like on the ground and the actual development. And planning and city staff kind of stand right in that intersection, and then city council's sort of purview is to make sure we're moving forward and meeting the needs of the community. So I'd like to see, with the growth discussion that we're looking at it holistically, we're looking at all of our plans that we've created in the past and updating those holistically. So we're meeting the needs of the community, creating walkable spaces, energy and food independence that should be parts of our goals, as well as finding and maintaining spaces that people can gather, come together like we are here today, and talk about the issues and help shape that future. I think that starts at the community and neighborhood levels. And I was very inspired by the city council meeting a few nights ago when we saw a large contingent of people that don't generally come out to city council meetings. There's an issue out there with enforcement of the occupancy limits that obviously is somewhat controversial, but at this meeting it doesn't seem all that controversial. I don't believe, based on the type of input we're getting from people who may be disenfranchised by the current system, should be ignored. I think we're overwhelmingly, the city is against, in my opinion, the occupancy limits from the original rule through the enforcement. And I'd like to hear more voices, but from trying to take place, and unfortunately that got kicked to the future to make decisions in the future, and I think that's kind of one of the things I'm seeing on city council that I don't appreciate that much. We need to honor the people that come out to these meetings and be able to make decisions. We're hired to make decisions, and that's what I will do. I'll use my engineering background, my background as an environmental and social activist, and as a father, as a business owner, I think I bring a different perspective as a renter and someone who's lived in very different economic, socioeconomic situations throughout my life. Thank you.
And Ed, as one of your neighbors, you brought a great space in North Boulder. Jan, you're next up. You got 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jan Burton. I'm happy to be here with you. I moved to Boulder about 6.5 years ago. After the death of my husband, I came here to heal. And I feel like Boulder is an incredibly great place for that. It's a very welcoming community, open spaces, beauty, and I absolutely love Boulder. So I'm running for city council because I want Boulder to stay one of the best cities in the world in the next 20 to 30 years. And I feel like we're at a crossroads, and we must make decisions now that will help us become the best city that we can in the future. And I promise to bring a very forward-looking, fact-based, common-sense approach to my service at City Council. One of the things that I've got involved with when I first came to town about a little over 6 years ago was I got very involved in the music community. I served as a volunteer and on the board of several music organizations, including the Colorado Music Festival and E-Town and the CU College of Music. We have just an amazing amount of music. In fact, we have, I think, more musicians per capita in Boulder than anywhere in the country, and with 6 orchestras. So there's no reason that all of us can't take advantage of listening to the music and getting ourselves involved with art. And of course, music has proven to be one of the great tools in education of our kids and our grandkids as well. So it was really joyful for me to be involved in that. And I've grown from that music experience into wanting to become more involved in the city as a whole. That's why I'm getting involved with the city council. One of my priorities in being on the city council would be to listen very actively to the community. Because I feel like a city council person's job is to listen and represent the community rather than having a mission that they're on. And an example of listening is reading and understanding the community survey that was done just a year ago. And how many of you were aware that there was a community survey done? Did anyone, well, quite a few of you. Did any of you fill it out? Okay, good. It was pretty long, wasn't it? Yeah, there were comments about that. I bring it up because I've never really heard it discussed before by city employees or by the council. And I think it's very good information in that survey. It's statistically significant for literally every neighborhood. And you can even pull the information by neighborhood. And the kinds of things it tells us are that, first of all, we love living here. We feel good about the quality of life, the neighborhoods, indoor and outdoor recreation, and the environment. So that's really great. We feel safe, and we think Boulder is a good place to work. We're not feeling so great as a city about employment opportunities, cost of housing, managing congestion, or spending our tax dollars wisely. And only 57% of the people who were surveyed, who answered, said that Boulder City Council implements policies that reflect the values of the community, which means they're really not quite in alignment with the community. In fact, some of the things that they'd really like us to improve are potholes, fixing potholes, and making sure that the snow gets scraped off the roads. So I feel like it's important to read this stuff. If we're going to take the time to survey our community, then we better understand it, we better talk about it, and that should become a topic of conversation at further meetings. Because it's the information we should value and base everything else on. So my priorities are much like everyone else's priorities. Number one is listening to the community actively and figuring out how to validate that input and how to act on it. Housing and transportation, clearly that's got to be on everyone's priority list. Arts, I've shown my commitment to the arts. And another thing that I'm very committed to is involving young adults, both in our nonprofits and in our city. Because if we don't get them involved, then how will they help us reach the Boulder of the future? So those are the things I'm really committed to. I think I bring the experience and the knowledge to help us accomplish our top objectives for the next 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan, and our last 5-minute presentation is from Bob Yates.
Well, you know, with the last name of Yates, I'm used to being last, as Valerie knows as well, and that's okay, that's okay. Well, first I want to thank the folks at Plan Boulder. Thank you, Bruce, and Ray, and Ruth, and Pat for putting this together. This is a valuable service that Plan Boulder puts on for the community every 2 years, and I think it's absolutely wonderful. It's done in a nonpartisan way, brings folks together and talks about the issues of the day. So thank you very much for doing this for all of us. You know, someone once said that the first responsibility of a leader is to frame reality, and his last responsibility is to say thank you. And in between, the leader is a servant. I started my career about 30 years ago, and I had many opportunities to lead and to serve. I started as a lawyer in private practice, and over the next 10 years, my partners and I grew our law firm by threefold, providing employment opportunities for about 100 people. I then had an opportunity to join a small group of folks. We started up a little startup company in Omaha, Nebraska, which we called Level 3 Communications. And over the course of 15 years, we grew it from a handful of people, less than that are in this room, to a Fortune 500 company. I'm very proud of that. My third adventure in life began 4 years ago, on my 50th birthday, when I retired from Level 3 Communications to dedicate all my time in service to the Boulder community. I've had many opportunities over the course of the last 4 years to lead and to serve, to bring people together, and to get things done. I'm proud of the fact that, as chairman of the Boulder Parks and Recreation Department, Boulder Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, working with the department, we have the opportunity to save the pottery lab. I'm proud of the fact that, as treasurer of the Colorado Chautauqua Association and as point person on the lease negotiations with the city, we've recently secured a long-term lease between the city and Chautauqua, preserving Chautauqua for the community for many years. I'm proud of the fact that I serve on the board of directors of the Dairy Center, where we're making wonderful changes to the Dairy Center to improve it, to renovate it, to grow it, so that 200,000 people a year can continue experiences in entertainment and education. But perhaps my proudest accomplishment in recent years has been leading the Boulder History Museum. I've been president of the Boulder History Museum. A few years ago, we recognized that we were not adequately serving the community. So we brought the board together, we purchased the Masonic Lodge 2 blocks from Pearl Street. We've raised nearly $8 million converting the museum from the old Boulder History Museum to the new Museum of Boulder, a place where we'll not only honor and preserve our history, we'll be able to celebrate Boulder's leadership and innovation in science and technology, and provide a children's museum, which Boulder has done for the past 15 years. Looking forward, I believe that Boulder needs proven leadership. I believe that to thrive, we need planned and measured growth. I believe that we need to provide quality, attainable housing for our middle class. I believe that we need to make it easier for people to ride a bike and take a bus, but we can do that in ways that don't make it harder for people to drive cars. I believe that we can be effective green leaders. I believe that we can and should do more to support culture and the arts in our community. And I believe that while we should honor and preserve our past, Boulder's best days are yet ahead of us. If you go to my campaign website, you'll see the names of about 200 people who've already endorsed me. They're teachers, students, veterans and architects, Democrats and Republicans, people in their 20s, seniors in their 80s. And they don't all agree with me on all the issues, but each one of them has asked me to serve the community. So I ask you today to join those 200 people and give me the opportunity to serve you on the Boulder City Council. Thank you.
Bob, I want to personally thank you for giving my sister-in-law a job at level 3. Appreciate that. So now we have questions. We have quite a few questions. Glenn Boulder has assembled and got a group of questions together, plus we're soliciting questions from you, and if you have questions, put them on the card, pass them on to the group. And since we have so many candidates and so many questions, we don't want to create a scrum like the Republican debates. So I'm going to be fairly disciplined about keeping your answers to 1 minute. I'll give you a 15-minute sign, and then I'm going to cut you off if need be in 1 minute, just so we can keep things rolling and keep moving to questions. So we'll start, let's see, we'll start with you, Don, and I think this is a bit of a softball given your opening statement. What is your position on municipalization? and also, one element of the question, I want to say it clearly now so I don't have to repeat it, is not only what is your position, but what circumstances would lead you to change your position? You have 1 minute.
Okay. I've said that as far as I can find out, and the research that I've done, that municipalization is a flawed program and does not provide what we wanted, was to reduce greenhouse gases. So I'm saying, let's get off of that path and turn to one where we can get greenhouse gases. And the only thing that would convince me is that if they go back and redo all the crappy documents that they've turned out and turn them into real honest reports, because they're not. Any casual review of the documents that I'm talking about, all the reports that they've done, the checks they've made on the system, they're all contrived, incomplete, and just do not address the question.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
I support the objectives that were originally stated in limiting our carbon footprint, because I do feel it's the top issue that we're facing today as in the world. Boulder has chosen to go down this path of municipalization as our methodology of doing this, but I think it may not be feasible from a regulatory, from a legal standpoint, and possibly not from an economic standpoint. So we need to be looking at it very closely with a fact-based approach. And I'm going to take that fact-based approach by meeting with people on both sides of the issue so I can understand it a little bit more, and also by meeting with some consultants that have good information. I think if the PUC comes out with their ruling that says they're throwing it out, we certainly need to have a Plan B approach, and I hope that the city and the council already has that in their back pocket.
Thank you. Bob?
Thanks. Well, I believe that Boulder can and must demonstrate effective green leadership. Next year's Public Utility Commission decision will set the stage for Boulder City Council to decide whether to go forward with condemning Xcel's power system or to pursue other paths. As a lawyer who represented a municipal power company in Omaha, Nebraska for more than a decade, I think I'm pretty well qualified to help my colleagues on the Boulder City Council make decisions that are legally sound and financially intelligent. If there's a financially responsible, legally sound, and environmentally friendly way to run our own power utility, we'll do it. If there are problems with the plan, we will adjust. But in everything we do, we must be fair, we must be responsible, we must be transparent, and we must always keep in mind our unifying objective of effective green leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Cindy?
My understanding is that the city has put forward a reasonable and cost-effective plan to the PUC PUC. And if it's decided again, if the PUC decides so that there are unanticipated costs in delivery of service or in reliability, then I think that cannot be then corrected by the courts. I think that the issue should go back to the voters to see if it is they who want to bear any increased costs. I think as it was put forward for us that there is an off-ramp, and I think that it's very admirable that we have taken this on ourselves as we have to do, it seems, municipality by municipality in order to get green energy. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy.
Okay. As an environmental engineer, I'm all for renewable energy. I appreciate the goals of this particular effort. I think that the conditions have changed. If costs are now, if we're understanding, are a lot higher than they were, if the goals of meeting a reliable system, maintaining and operating that system, making it as resilient and reliable as the existing system at least, can't be met with the new information we have. I think that should be transparent. It should go back to the voters, again, if those conditions have changed significantly. As an environmental engineer, I would look at the details, dive into the technical aspects of this, and be able to validate costs that are being put out there.
Thanks, Ed. Aaron.
Well, I am a proponent of municipalization. I'm a fan of it for 3 reasons. One is it gives us our clearest path to a zero carbon electricity future. The second is it gives us local control over our energy supply. And the third is that it allows us for innovations with our energy supply. And we've seen that with other cities that have municipal utilities. A great example is Fort Collins with their Fort Zed effort. They're doing things that we're simply not allowed to do with our current setup under Excel. So I am a proponent. I do believe it's a good path forward. What might change my mind would be if we have setbacks in the courts. So if the court system or the PUC says that we have to go through, that we're not allowed to proceed, or if we have significant setbacks on that side, or if they put a price on the utility that is unaffordable, then we're going to need to look at other paths to maximize renewable energy, including negotiating with Excel.
Great, thank you, Aaron. So our next question is another that Glenn Boulder was suggesting, as well as some of the cards from the audience. So we'll go with this question, which is, do you support the neighborhood right to vote initiative? And if so, why or why not? Ed, you will begin.
I don't think probably anyone's going to be satisfied with my answer. I don't think anyone on the city council or the candidates on the city council should be trying to influence. This is a citizens initiative, and I support that fully. I respect the fact that the community came together to put these initiatives on the ballot. I haven't made my final decision yet. I have a lot of friends on either side of this issue, and I see the points of both sides of it, and let's see what happens November 3rd.
Thanks, Cindy?
I do support the neighborhood's right to vote. I think that it is something that the neighborhoods feel that they were driven to because they weren't being listened to by their government. It's something that I think is sort of a last stand, and it will lead to some community planning, which is what I would like to see happen, as has happened in North Boulder, so that we have a better grasp, everyone has a better grasp of what's happening going forward, rather than having to deal with unanticipated zonings that can change the entire range of a neighborhood.
Thank you, Cindy. Bob?
Well, I'm afraid I have to say that I oppose this ballot measure the way it's written. While the sentiment of allowing each neighborhood to govern itself sounds attractive, this ballot measure will fracture our community, bringing unintended consequences. As a lawyer, I have carefully studied the ballot measure, and I believe the ambiguities it contains will generate significant litigation, costing the city substantial sums of money, and which will chill community improvements. It will pit neighborhood against neighborhood. It will throw out 225 years of representative democracy, and it attempts to solve problems that don't really exist. Indeed, even its backers assert that the new ordinance will be used rarely, if ever. But if this ordinance passes, it will amend the city's charter, which is our constitution, and we will be stuck with it. Those trying to make modest improvements in our community will be fearful of the uncertainties and the delays it causes. Fights will ensue, dividing us, Boulder is one community. Let's make our decisions together. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Jan?
I do not support the initiatives either, and I do understand why it came about, because I have met with some people that have explained to me that the city was not listening well to their needs. So I understand that, and I feel for that, but I do not think this is the right approach. We already have too many zoning restrictions, and we have a desperate need to find affordable housing for all age groups. And I believe if this got put into the city charter, we would find ourselves with all kinds of legal applications, and the slow up in the process of doing anything in terms of creative housing or alternative housing in different neighborhoods. So I really believe it would have negative impacts on housing costs, on transportation, and on the environment.
Thank you, Jan. Don?
Yeah, well, I think last year's speakers have clearly identified what the problems are with this. But what concerns me about it is that those two initiatives really say that we have a badly broken government, that the people fear and distrust to do the job for them. And the solution to that is to get rid of that government. Not to try to make a couple changes, because if that's what you gotta do, you gotta make changes every other day. You're gonna have an initiative, because you don't trust those people to do what's right. So that leaves me very much up in the air. If we put the same people back on the council and give them this, we've just created problems for ourselves. So if you're willing to change the council and put that, you don't need the amendment.
Thank you, Dave. Back to you, Aaron.
Well, I don't support this initiative. I feel like we should be doing our planning as a city and not neighborhood by neighborhood. And I feel like it could endanger some important services that we provide. I've heard from social service providers and affordable housing providers who are against this initiative because they fear that it would make it harder to place those services within our city. And on planning board, I've seen that I think generally we do listen to neighbors and neighborhoods. There have been a number of things that have occurred while I've been on the planning board that have been denied by the board because of overwhelming community opposition. Examples of that include the Hogan-Pencost annexation in southeast Boulder, a negative reception of the baseline zero proposal in South Boulder, and also just recently a proposed rezoning of 385 South Broadway. So I feel like citizens do have a voice, and the city is often responsive.
Thank you, Aaron. Our next question is the companion to that question. And we'll begin with you, Jan. And that question, of course, is, do you support the development pays initiative?
Thank you. I love the line. Why shouldn't development pay their own way? Sounds good, doesn't it? Well, how many of us have done the fact finding about what developers pay today? Ask yourself that question, because that's what I was asking myself. Well, what do they pay? Surely they pay something, right? So I got some information for an apartment complex of 300 units approximately. They paid $1.7 million in impact fees, $1.6 million in permitting and sales tax, $2.8 million in plant investment, $5.8 million in affordable housing, and another $176,000 in development review expenses. So that's a total of $11.7 million, of which half was for affordable housing. So I think the bigger question is, how is the city using those funds? Because the developers are certainly paying their own way. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Don?
Well, thank you for those facts, Jan, because they really help them frame the problem and come down to how is the city using its money. They certainly have the opportunity, it's already in the charter, that they had to ask developers to pay their way. And are they really using the money? I don't know where the money goes in this place, but it seems to be shifting here, there, and everywhere. So I don't want to put more money in their pocket until I know where it's going to go.
Thank you. Aaron?
So I do not support this initiative. I absolutely support the sentiment behind it. Growth should pay its own way. The city has done a number of studies and tied impact fees to new development, and recently instituted a new affordable housing linkage fee for commercial development. I support all of those things. I'm very concerned, though, about the wording of the initiative. As I read it, it could result in many different outcomes. And I fear that it would end all development, given the lack of clarity, and that we would lose the fees from new development, but we would, more importantly, we'd lose the ability to provide some additional housing that we desperately need to help offset the increase in housing prices in this community. So I do not support the initiative for those reasons.
Thank you, Eric. Ed?
Well, I also feel it's not clear the way it's written. I support developers and the city filling in all the gaps, doing development holistically, not just adding some off-site housing or paying into fees, but making sure that we're providing the infrastructure and reliability as well as the community aspects that need to be supported, art and culture, as well as gathering spaces, and again, the reliable infrastructure that goes along with it.
Thanks. Cindy?
I do support the citizens initiative. We've had it, that new development, new growth should pay its own way in the comp plan since I believe 1977. But it's just been aspirational. How about it's time we put some teeth to this and actually get the impact fees to pay for the impacts rather than those of us in this room paying the larger subsidies that pay for the infrastructure. We have an enriched infrastructure in this city because we've been putting into it for all these years. When new developments come in, particularly the large ones, there's no way they can offset the impacts they're going to have if they're not paying something into it. Something like Google, a company like Google is a good example. They're bringing in all kinds of people. What will that do? Look at what the cost of our housing is now. It's just skyrocketing, both rentals and otherwise.
Thank you, Cindy. Bob?
I oppose this ballot measure. Well, new development certainly should pay its own way. The development fees need to be reasonable and certain. This ballot measure provides fees that are neither reasonable nor certain. We already oppose per square footage fees on development that supports affordable housing in our community. And if there's a community desire to raise fees on new development, let's agree up front how much those fees will be and what they'll be used for. But this ballot measure goes far beyond that, mandating ambiguous increases in some fees by some amounts for some developments for some purposes. Now, if we amend our city charter, again, that's our constitution, community improvements will be chilled, uncertainty and competing interests will certainly file lawsuits, and a fight will ensue over what this new law really means. Let's decide these things together with clarity, with one voice. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Our next question is very simple, but very complex in concept. What is your view of right sizing? Cindy, why don't you begin on that?
This is an easy one, isn't it? I support the city's climate action program and applaud their willingness to try different things, but I don't think that right sizing is the right way to go about it. From everyone whom I've spoken to, people who use cars, bicycles, walking, whatever, retailers, people are really upset about this, not in favor of it. I think that if we had consulted the citizens, again, on the front end, something like this might happen quite differently in terms of the rollout. And I also question doing it on such a largely used, such a major north-south boundary. So I think that this just wasn't the right thing to do at this time.
Thanks.
If ever.
Well, I have to find myself in agreement with my friend Cindy. I think this is a good idea in a bad place. The trade-off between bicycles and cars doesn't need to be zero-sum. We don't need to punish drivers of cars in order to make it easier for people to ride bikes. I would suggest that actually has the opposite effect. The Folsom Street experiment is a good example of bad planning. If our goal was to create safer bike routes north-south in that corridor, I think the better place to put it would have been on 26th Street, which goes from Canyon up to Mapleton, where then you can jump on the Elmer's 2-mile path all the way north of Iris. I think that That would have been less disruptive to cars and would have been a safer and quieter option for bikes. We don't need to pit drivers against cyclists. Rather, we should make cycling so easy and so safe, people want to get out of their cars and ride bikes on their own free will. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Jan?
I seem to agree with both of them. I don't think the project was all that well conceived and certainly not well communicated in advance. And I think all drivers felt like they were really put upon for this. And in fact, a lot of bikers that I've heard from have said that it hasn't made it safer for them. Now, I will say I am the one person who is out there riding on Folsom to see what it's like. And it's not as bad as everyone's talking about. You know, one of the things I question is what was the real reason for it? I think a lot of people talked about the real reason being safety of bike riders, and I don't think we really accomplished that. However, I think the city has listened a lot, and they have made some revisions, and they are tracking what is happening. There is no real impact on business. I know that because I've been out there interviewing them. And so I think we need to continue to give it a little bit more time so that we can see what are the metrics which will help us make fact-based decisions for the future.
Thank you, Jan. Don?
They have had enough time for this thing. They didn't take measurements before, so we have no way of knowing whether it's a success or a failure. Right sizing, I'm from a different generation, right sizing to me means an excuse for a layoff. And maybe we should use this for an excuse to lay off the people who voted it in there. Bad thing.
Thank you, Aaron.
Well, I have been a supporter of this project, and the key reason for that for me is about improving safety for families and less confident cyclists. So we don't have a good north-south bike route in that area. You have to go way out of your way to get a good north-south route. I bike regularly with my children, and I'm unwilling to take my 9-year-old daughter on a bike lane this wide next to very busy traffic. That said, we had a real lack of data collected before the project, and there have been serious operational difficulties with the implementation. So it needs to be fixed. You know, we're having serious problems, particularly in the evening rush hour. And so I'm supportive of the steps the city is taking to improve the functionality of it. We should continue to try to improve it. And if we end up at the end with gridlock, we're going to have to back out.
Thanks, Aaron. Ed?
I think the goals of improving traffic, well, safety for bikers and pedestrians is a great one. We should be absolutely going towards those goals. This project seems to be still in an experimental phase. The design is being tweaked. Still, we don't have good data, but we do have people who want to keep pushing and do all the rest of the areas of the state for this. I think we should slow down, stop where we're at right now, collect data for the next 12 months. Things change throughout a 12-month cycle here as far as the use of the road. And come back, revisit it, let the have another chance at weighing in on this, and have a survey, present the results back in an unbiased way to the folks in the city and try.
So our next question, we'll begin with you, Bob, is related to that, but expanding out. So the question is, what would you do to support, what kind of strategies would you support for increasing in community? So Bob, why don't you take that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things we can do. First of all, I think we need to recognize that Boulder will always be a job center. We will always have more people working here than living here. So we do need to address the question that Bruce raised, which is how do we allow those people to live in other places and come into the community without putting as much carbon into the air? And I think there's a lot of solutions to that. We should expand our regional bus system and provide more park and ride at our periphery, or bike and ride at our periphery. I was talking to folks at Google. They're very, very concerned about this. They're going to add a lot of jobs this time. They don't want to add a lot of carbon to our environment. So they're very aggressive on ride sharing, car sharing, on vans for employees. I think that continuing to provide easy access to the core of the town and people who choose to live outside our community is something that we need to have the political will to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Jan?
I agree with Bob. I think one thing is to work in conjunction with our businesses, because many of the businesses in Boulder are sustainably oriented and they want to help us solve these problems. Number two, we should be working very closely with RTD and try to get them to, from all the fees that we're paying them, try to get them to deliver services, both within Boulder, but also regionally from Highway 36, Longmont, Lafayette, et cetera. And then if we can't get them to do that, then I think we need to be working with our sister cities to see what we need to do for regional transport.
Yeah, this is a perfect example of what I've said before, is that the city council doesn't know how to prioritize. That this is a very high priority item for us. And the way we're gonna solve it is to reach out to those cities around us, because it's their problem too. And we are so introspective here. The little kingdom of Boulder doesn't even know anything exists outside of it. But there is a place outside, there's a lot of people there. So we have to be making alliances with those people to work to make that an efficient transfer of people back into the city.
Thank you.
Well, I think regional transit is an important key to this problem. So we're getting the new bus rapid transit system into Denver and back from Denver, and we need to push RTD to provide us with elevated service levels on that route, both into downtown and into the Boulder Junction area. And as a next phase, we should implement similar bus rapid transit projects to East County and to Longmont. At the same time, we need to add more transportation options in town, and so that's where you bring in last mile solutions, things like ride sharing and car sharing and bike sharing programs, so that people, once the bus drops them off, or if they drive in, they can take they don't have to take their car in for errands while they're in town. I think another piece of this too is adding some additional housing in our central commercial areas. So I think the 28th and 30th Street areas have room to add some additional housing so that people can live here instead of commuting in here, and live right near where they work.
At Google.
Thank
Right
you.
across the street.
Ed, you're up.
I agree with increasing the ability of people to use public transit and supporting those systems, making sure they make sense. But it's also very intimately tied with the affordable housing issue and the jobs issue and what type of jobs we're creating and supporting here in this town. If we can do a lot towards affordable housing, people will be able to live here and have less people coming in and out of town every day. And if we can support the jobs of the people who are already working here but can't afford to live here, I think that'll go a long ways.
Thanks. Cindy?
I would like to see us have stronger negotiations with RTD. I think that that's the place to start. Julie McCabe, who I believe, I'm gonna give her a little plug here, she's running for council, and she's passionate about this.
Sorry.
She's passionate about this particular topic, how much we pay into RTD and how little we get for it. That being said, there are all of the other, we have ride share, we have car share, we have bike share, and it's not working. So something needs to be done in terms of analysis with this, look at how it has worked in other communities, it has worked in other communities. Stanford wanted to add, this is around 2 million square feet. And we're told by the city there, Palo Alto, they could not do that unless they did some kind of management of traffic. And they put a demand management system into place, and they were able to reduce SOVs by something like 65%. If they can do it there, we can do it here, but I think we need to look out for that.
Great, thanks. So our third question in this sort of commuting sequence has three parts for a 1 minute answer. So this is the question: do you think there should be a community-wide eco-pass, and how should we fund it? Finally, is RTD's process for determining the cost of eco-passes equitable? So do you think there should be one? How should we fund it? And is RTD's process equitable? Jan, why don't you begin?
Well, I'll start with the last one. No, I don't think it's equitable. I moved from one neighborhood where I was able to get a pass for $67 or something for a year, and the next neighborhood I moved to couldn't get one at all. So that doesn't seem to me. And the reason why was because there wasn't a sponsor in the neighborhood. So that isn't equitable. I talked to some young people who are paying $80 per month for Boulder. That for a 23-year-old, that's not very equitable. So I think we need to be negotiating hard with RTD to give us some special pricing on EcoPass. I would love to see free or very low priced EcoPass for all people. I would try first to get it negotiated from RTD and then look at a ballot measure.
Great, thanks.
You know, I had an EcoPass that I kept in my wallet 3 years, and I used it twice. And I wonder how many other people in the city actually do the same thing. When you see the buses traveling around and nobody's on them, I'm not sure why we're subsidizing them. It means that that system isn't structured to support the transportation needs of the people in the city. So the EcoPass is one thing, but if the system's not servicing the people who need it, why the hell give Eric all these passes? Oh, I can keep going, guys.
Yes, I absolutely support the idea of a community EcoPass. I think it's one of our key routes forward on our commuting and problems in our use of transit here in town. I'm open to a lot of to different potential funding mechanisms. You know, people are working hard on this right now in the city and in the county. I look forward to hearing what they're coming out with. But currently, a lot of people already pay for neighborhood and business EcoPasses. You know, one possibility would be to replace those funding streams with a small property tax levy, and that could be potentially extended beyond city boundaries into a taxing district, so we could make it even a county-wide or Boulder Valley-wide system. So I'm interested to see different approaches we might take. RTD is a difficult partner on these issues. I was one of the neighborhood EcoPass coordinators. We always had a hard time working with them. They don't fund things equitably. We're going to have to drive hard bargains with them.
Thanks. Ed?
I do support the community EcoPass idea. We'd like to look at all different ways of funding it. I don't think it's equitable right now. Certain people can't get it or paying a lot more than they should be for it. You know, it just gives us a lot more options. It encourages people to use it. When there's a cost involved, then people will just not use our public transportation system.
Thanks, Ed. Cindy?
I do support a community-wide EcoPass, and I do not think it's equitable now. However, we drive a bargain with RTD, I think we need to do that, and that may be illegal. I agree with Don that when we see these buses riding around empty, something's broken here. We're seriously broken. The buses that are the most full are around the university, and the students pay through their student fees and upfront costs for the EcoPasses. So it behooves them to use it, and there is more steady. The headways are good there. The buses come, and it's an expected service for them. So I'd like to see us do tougher negotiations.
I absolutely support a citywide EcoPass. It has been estimated that the annual cost for such EcoPass would be between $50 and $100 a person, which is not a significant amount of money. And this could be covered in any number of ways. We could do it through a head tax, half of which would be paid for by employers. We could do it through a sales tax increase, half of which would be paid for by visitors to our community. So regardless of the funding mechanism, I think it's a good way for us to have effective green leadership. I'm going to pull out my EcoPass, and these cost me and my wife, $190 a year. Some of you have to pay $1,200 a year for the same card. Wow. That's not right. That's not right. I teach negotiation skills at the University of Denver Law School. I'm an adjunct professor there. And when I teach my students negotiation skills, I tell them you always need to remember just 3 things in negotiations: leverage, leverage, leverage. The next time RTD comes to us and asks us for something, I think our answer needs to be, we need to have a long discussion.
Thanks, Bob. And this next one's going to start with you. So this is an audience question. What is your opinion of the building going up on the street on the former Daily Camp building site? Does it represent your vision for New York? Would you have approved it if you were on planning board? What do you like or dislike about that building?
Well, I've not looked into the details of the design of the building. I don't like to see the fact that the established long-term businesses that are part of Boulder for many, many years are being pushed out and going to kind of a big city blow-up model. I really
I like that description, big city blow-up model. I think that, it pretty much fits. In the 1990s, there was a planning process for the downtown, and supposedly there was a pyramidal plan that everybody bought into, including the planning department, where Broadway would be the place with the tallest buildings, and then they'd feather out into the neighborhoods. The new daily camera building is too big, too massive, blocks views, and in the wintertime will be overshadowing sidewalks. It'll be cold. It makes the wind blow harder through those areas. I think it's the wrong building in the wrong place. Big city blow-up building. And I wouldn't have voted for it.
I think it is butt ugly. I don't know how it got approved. It certainly got approved from a zoning standpoint, and I get that. But you know what? It's more than is the right building in the right place. We need to worry about aesthetics in our community as well. I think there's some butt ugly buildings out at Boulder Junction as well. So how do we fix that? Because some of those buildings are built by right. The developer has the right, under the rules we have in place, to put up butt ugly buildings. And we need to fix that part of the problem. There's a thing called form-based codes. This is something that Boulder started to look into, and I'm really enthusiastic about it. And what that does is it goes a step further. It says, you know, not only does the building need to be a certain height and a certain shape, it matters what it looks like. What's the color? What's the materials? What's the setback? We need to have beautiful buildings in this community. And by adopting form-based codes, we get together as a community, we come to consensus ahead of time about what we think is attractive and beautiful and what's not ugly. And we tell the developers and the architects ahead of time, not only do you have to build a building of this size, it needs to look kind of like this. Thanks.
Thanks, Bob. Jen?
Well, I'm not gonna make a statement about that building, but in general, I think with a lot of our restrictions, we've taken a lot of the beauty out of architecture, and we've taken a lot of the joy out of building buildings in this city, whether it be a house, or an office building, or a commercial building. And I think somehow we've got to take the restrictions off and allow creativity of architects and builders to shine through. So that's what they were trained to do, that's what gives them joy, and that's not the case in Boulder anymore.
Thanks. Don?
Yeah, one of the audience talking to me about this very problem before our meeting here. And it was really coming down to the new architecture is ugly. It's all square boxes, whether you're going through on Pearl Street Canyon there at the junction with those. But again, those are individual perspectives. But we do need to have some type of control, and I think the things that Bob was talking about are real without being too specific. They have to have some flexibility. That's what an architect is there for, is to put that flexibility in there. But not to be butt ugly.
Thanks, Don. Aaron's perhaps it's appropriate, the last word on this?
Right, well, I did vote for that project, so I have a record on this issue. And that project is butt ugly, because it's a construction project. You know, right now it's just nothing but girders, and it's loud, and it's noisy, and it blocks the views. But when I looked at that project on planning board, I think it provides us a real hopeful vision for that site. I think it's going to be an attractive building, is my hope. It's providing a plaza next to Centros. It's providing a rooftop plaza that will be a public area where anyone can go up and sit and have a cup of coffee and enjoy the views. And it's going to have retail along the ground floor that'll activate that corner. What we had before there was a really ugly parking lot, and I don't think the Daily Camera building was a shining example of architecture either. So I think right now it's a terrible spot, it's a terrible construction project, but I think in 3 or 4 years when it's built out and we have new businesses there, it's going to really lend itself to the vitality of downtown, and we're going to enjoy being there.
Thanks, Aaron. So we have a couple of questions about sort of the urban growth boundary in open space. The first one sounds technical, but it's real important. Should four-body review be preserved in the renewal of the City of Boulder, County of Boulder IGA? Cindy, why don't you start that?
I think that we should preserve the four-body review. In the past, when people have been looking at the reserve up on North 28th Street, from time to time it seems as though there's been something important enough to start developing up there. And without it If it were just up to the city council, oftentimes I actually feared that something would happen that wasn't really important enough to build on. In terms of the planning preserve, it's a planning preserve. It should be there in case we really need it for some special thing in future, not now. And I think having a core body review preserves the rush to build that may occur without having to have sign off like the other bodies.
So let me back up and kind of explain, because this is a little inside baseball here. So Boulder's like this, and then the counties are around this, right? And then around the periphery, where the city ends but the county kind of begins, there's these reserves that Cindy was referring to. The question is, who gets to decide what happens around the periphery, right? And I fully agree that those should be joint decisions between the city, the core, and the county on the outside. I've always, however, found this kind of idea of a four-body review a little bit odd, because the four bodies are this. There's the Boulder City Council, should have a say. Boulder City Council, in turn, appoints the planning board. That's one of the four bodies. And then the county commissioners appoint a planning commission. And so I've always found it a little odd that these subordinate bodies, which are appointed by the superior bodies, have a say, because of course they serve at the pleasure of the people that appoint them. So I think, I think planning reserves should be decided between the city and the county. I think that we can have two bodies making those important decisions. Thanks.
Thanks, Bob. Dan?
Well, I had not thought of it that way. Wow. I think it's a very good point, because really nothing will get to the city council or to the county council without going to the planning board first, right? So I agree that I think those lands should be preserved, and it should be a joint decision between the city and the county.
John?
Yeah, thanks, Bob, for that definition, because I was sitting here figuring out how. And I do think that putting it to there ought to be two people deciding it. The four doesn't make sense to me. And I think if the city councils and the county council can't get together and come to a decision, we're in trouble already. I mean, they're gonna try it. Troika would make a difference.
So I think one of the strengths of our system is here, that we don't plan just as a city, but we plan as a larger regional area. So we're going through right now the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan update. It's a bit of a mouthful. And that covers not just the city, but the surrounding areas that are in the county. And we decide on those issues jointly with the county, and that's, I think, a real strength of our system. Just last night, I was part of a joint session between the planning board and the county planning commission, including Mr. Pat Shanks right here. And we had a productive discussion, and I think it added valuable perspective. So I would not look at changing that approach to the comprehensive plan.
So you support two?
And why don't you?
I said, don't change.
I like the four-body system.
Oh, four
actually.
bodies, okay.
Yes, I think we've seen that the planning department really doesn't have a lot of checks and balances, and the city council that we had recently, I don't think has approached a lot of these decisions, as an independent source. But it's really providing checks and balances. These planning reserves should be reviewed as part of the comprehensive planning, not necessarily saying how they'll be used, but maybe identifying all the possibilities. So we have a good, forward-looking path going out of this process.
Thanks, Ed. So, this question, it's a long one. Open Space at Mountain Parks is currently conducting its process with the North Trail study here. The area under consideration includes unfragmented habitat blocks designated in the Boulder County Comprehensive Plan as critical for preservation. Do you support building trails through these blocks or preserving them?
Well, let's see, I live right next to the North TSA. I've been involved in the planning process up to this point. I think it has a lot of potential. Right now, I think we have the trails that we have in the North TSA right now are poorly designed and don't live on the landscape well. I think there's an opportunity in that North TSA for adding some additional trails in the area while closing some and rerouting others and doing an overall system redesign such that you could add additional recreational opportunities, including the ability for people to mountain bike from town up to Heil Ranch, which would reduce our recreational carbon footprint, while at the same time lowering the overall environmental impact of the trail system in that area.
Thanks. Ben?
I'll say I'm not super familiar with this project. I believe that we study the environmental needs, as well as bringing people into areas so they can also appreciate these areas and make it very clear if we want to set aside preserves for a certain habitat, we need to do that, make it very clear, but also explain to people why we're doing that, and invite people out to the open space that may not be using it for.
Thanks. Cindy?
If I understood the question correctly, it was whether or not we should build trails through the critical habitat area. And my response would be no. That it is just what it is. It's critical habitat area. And I think that the open space needs to have the utmost respect for that designation. And those of us, the users, need to have the utmost respect.
Thanks. Bob?
So what we're doing right now is, there's actually a inventory underway in the North TSA to really understand what trails we have, where this critical habitat exists. And until that's done, it's kind of hard for us to have an objective discussion. But when that inventory is completed in the next few months, I think there'll be a great opportunity for people who would like to preserve the fragile habitat that Bruce referred to, and also those who would like to enjoy recreational use on the North TSA. As Aaron said, some of the trails need to be moved. They're not in good places, but we absolutely have to protect our fragile habitat as well, while allowing opportunities for recreational users to enjoy the space which they pay for. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
I am a volunteer for OSMP as part of the Raptor monitoring program, and I have the ultimate respect in open space mountain parks and their programs, et cetera. When there is land that is critical habitat, whether it be because of grasslands or certain species, we absolutely should protect it. I also think we have a responsibility for giving access for hiking and biking and that kind of thing in the areas that would not be hurt by a trail system. And I think that we're on the path of doing that in the North Trail system.
Yeah, thought that comes to my mind is, where's King Solomon when you need him? The reason I'm talking about Swinging Baby here. I mean, we have a valuable resource in open space. It fits both, it has to serve both needs. Preserve the environment and provide for use by the people. And it's a balance that we have to go through all the time. And if it truly is critical, I don't know whether it is or not. I mean, I don't know if they overuse the term or underuse the term. If they are in fact critical, then we should try to find a way to maintain them. But it is, you know, open space is not just to look at.
Great, thank you. So in our remaining 6 minutes or so, we're going to ask each of the panelists, the candidates, to provide us with a 1 minute or less closing statement. So, Don, would you like to begin?
I will.
Would you?
Yeah, thank you all for coming. I'm glad you had a chance to visit East Boulder. I know you don't get out of there very often. I also want to thank the rest of the panel. I always find it very interesting with this panel and the one you had last time. I learned a lot from it. I remember when Julie McCabe came up with her statistics and talking about RTD and what it costs us and so forth. And some of the stuff Bob has said before in terms of getting the council off of their dais and down into the group and getting them closer to the people. So everybody on here and the other ones have been extremely valuable to me with their suggestions. And thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Dan?
I'd also like to thank Time Boulder for having this, and thank all of you for coming. I think it's wonderful that we get this kind of participation in our government in Boulder. I'm not a politician, but I think that outside interests might benefit the city council. My qualifications include 30 years in the business world. I was in the high-tech world, and I've also co-founded a company, so I'm doing a startup building tiny homes from shipping containers. I've also served on nonprofit boards here in Boulder, and I started a creative community building effort through the Mashup series. So I think my background gives me very good listening skills and critical thinking that would help the city council to gather a diversity of opinions and more fully vet the pros and cons of certain decisions. And I hope you'll check out my website and support me. Thank you.
Bob?
Every 2 years, Boulder engages in a job interview, right? We bring in about a dozen or so people and we hire them for 1 or 2 jobs. We call that the city council elections. And I think as we do that, we need to remember that we're hiring leaders. Leadership is a quality. It doesn't depend on answering a single question exactly the way the listener wants it. It's about framing the question, gathering facts, listening to people. Leadership's about exchanging ideas, making decisions, and then inspiring others to follow. I've had 3 decades of leadership experience in law and business, and now in serving the community. And along the way, I've learned that you can't lead by dividing people. So if I'm elected to city council, I'll lead by listening to people. I'll make decisions based on reason and not ideology. I'll be guided by common interests and not special interests. My name is Bob Yates. I'm interviewing for a job with you, to have the opportunity to lead you and to serve you. Please hire me for the job.
Cindy?
I'm Cindy Carlisle. I'm also interviewing for the job and have told you about some of my qualifications. I have a long history of listening in this community and trying to bring people together. And I hope that you'll put me in the seat again so that I might work with you all in future and help us all decide a collective vision of what kind of future we want to have. I don't have any special interests except the one that we're living in. Boulder is my special interest. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm Javari. Thank you all for being here, and thanks to Boulder for having us today. I think our critical issues here are how we're going to manage growth, affordable housing, and support to the arts and culture to create the place we all want to continue to live in. I think I bring a diverse background and viewpoints to the city council, much needed at this point, and look forward to serving everyone in this community and hearing from all.
Thanks. Aaron?
Great. Well, thank you again so much for having us here. Thanks to Boulder County for the hosting, and to all of you for attending. I want to leave you with a thought. I have a collaborative approach to public issues, and I believe in the value of each citizen's voice. And if you are so kind as to elect me to City Council, I will strive to listen to each and every member of our community, bring us together, and work hard to make the best possible decisions for our future. Please take a piece of literature, look me up, tell me your ideas for the future. I look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Excellent presentation. Thank you all for coming. I'd like to thank our candidates for joining us here today and having such an informative panel. Come join us next Friday for our last candidate debate. It will be at the Alfalfa's meeting room. If all goes well. Hopefully they haven't voted somebody else.
Nice to see you, Bob. Love the shirt, man.
You gonna do the third one?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll be there.
I actually Googled looking for someone today and I didn't
I just put it up like the half an hour before
I'll know for next time.
Yeah, see how it goes.
Tell you what we didn't have was
Crystal? So, hey, I have a question. Can I ask you your opinion on everything that's
I want to, but, I do, but let me just talk to a couple of these guys, and I'll come back to you. I want to talk to my neighbors first.
Okay.
Hi Lisa, how are you?
How are you? Good. You guys are doing okay?
Doing great. You doing okay?
Yeah. initiative cards. Oh, I missed it. Wrong one. This one? That was hang on, that's one. Is it yours? I'm worried about if there's somebody, can you unplug it? I'm just worried about this.
I'm just getting the, it's It's not just recording, it's broadcasting. Doing a live stream. See what I'm getting at?
Don't take them too soon. No, I'm straightening them up. I cannot stand clutter. Okay, you and I need to talk. Clutter. Thank you for coming, folks.
Pretty much do it right there.